Hello guys and welcome back. Last week we studied the artist Jasper. We saw some of his famous paintings, his most famous ones being of flags. We remember that Jasper Johns is a famous American artist who grew up in South Carolina, and we were inspired by his paintings of numbers and letters repeated within a grid. And then we created a grid, we folded a paper to create a grid and drew the letters of our name inside each square of that grid with oil pastel. Now let me show you the next step. Hello guys. We have been studying the artist Jasper Johns, and last week we used oil pastels to write the letters of our name in a paper that we had folded to create a grid. And so today I want to show you how to paint in these backgrounds. And we're going to use a technique called watercolor resist. This is done in oil pastel. We're going to be painting over it with watercolors. These are our watercolors. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So, watercolors are a paint. Right now they're dry, so I have to add water to them. And when you use watercolors, you really do want the paint to be watery. So what I'm going to do is, you know what, I'll do this pink letter so you can see mostly my watercolor paints. And I need to think of a different color than pink to paint this. So I'm going to paint it with this purple. This is purple. I've got water on my brush, and I'm going to move my brush carefully on the purple. And as I move my brush on the purple, I'm dissolving some of that purple paint. I can even put it here if I want to. If you wanted to make purple, you could mix blue and red to make purple. But you can see how watery this paint is. To work with watercolors, you want them to be really watery. So make a little puddle right here of purple paint. And once I want a big enough puddle, get some more paint, put it in my puddle. I want a big enough puddle to paint this whole square, so that should be good. And now I'm going to paint this square, and I'm going to stay right inside these lines to paint this square. Go back to my puddle to get more paint. Now I want you to watch this. When I paint over the pink, it doesn't stay, okay? It won't stick to the pink. Even if I try to paint over it, the paint won't stay there. The oil of the oil pastels resist the paint. So this is called watercolor resist, because wherever I colored with the oil pastel, the paint will not stick. The oil pastel keeps it from sticking. So I'm going to paint in this entire section. Alright, and now I have that square complete. Now I'm going to paint in another square, but I'm not going to paint in a square that's right next to this purple, because wherever that is wet, if I painted this one, those colors would blend together. So I'm going to do a square that doesn't touch that one. I'll go back to this one later, but for now I'm going to do one that doesn't touch. I need a different color than green. I'm actually going to do the opposite, the complement of green, which is red. Those are going to really stand out from one another because red and green are opposites. Oops, I got a drip of water there. We will have paper towels at our table. I'll show you about that later. That's a paper. So I'm making a puddle of red to paint that green. So I'm going to go ahead now and fast forward and paint the background behind these letters. As I go and paint these and fast forward, there's some things I wanted to talk to you about, just to remind you. And you'll notice one thing is that even though some of those paints look like they're empty, you can see the bottom of those little cups. There's still plenty of paint in there. As we water it down, there's plenty for us to use. I don't replace those until they're absolutely empty, because I have to take them out and put a totally new one in, and I don't want to waste any of our paint. Also notice that I'm making puddles like I pointed out, and that I'm being gentle with my brush so I'm not tangling up Mr. Brush's hair. Constantly adding water. If it's not resisting the oil pastel, it means that your paint isn't watery enough. So that's some tips as you watched me in fast forward. Okay, you can see that I painted all of my background, and it didn't paint over any of my letters, so this is ready to go to the drying rack. And I want to talk to you about our paint sets. You can see that a couple things I wanted to point out. Notice that even though some of these cups are running low, I still had plenty to use, and there's still plenty more left. Also, I was very gentle with my watercolor brush, so his hair is not messy. It's, you know, his hair isn't all tangled up. And that if I was mixing new colors, I was using the lid for that, all right? So I want to talk to you about cleanup steps. When we got these, our lids were clean, and so we need to leave them clean. So what you do is you take a brush. Oh, and I didn't mix any colors in these. These are all clean because I mixed colors here in the lid. I water all that down. Make sure your puddles are nice and watery. Then you take a towel and you can go through and absorb all of your puddles. Takes a little bit of time for the paper towel to absorb all that, and it might take more than one paper towel too. I'm going to let that absorb all that watercolor water. I think I'm going to need a second paper towel, so I'll throw that one away. You'll have, I'll show you the box of paper towels you'll have at your table that you can use. And this, I want to leave just like it was when I found it, nice and clean, before I put it back on the watercolor card. Okay, now that's nice and clean. Last step, make sure my brush is nice and his hair straight. This Mr. Brush cares about his hair just like our other Mr. Brush. And there is a large and a small in here. With the paintings we're doing today, we just use the large brush. And now this is ready to go back on the cart. I leave it open because if watercolor stays wet and then we close the lid on it, it can get sticky, and we don't want it to be sticky. We want it to go ahead and dry, so it'll be ready for our next time to use it. All right, that's it, guys. Today, I hope you enjoy creating your Jasper Johns inspired name paintings. Okay, I wanted to show you this photograph of the watercolor cart. It's where our watercolors are stored. To point out a few things, notice they're all left open. This is how you will get them today, and this is how you will leave them today. They're on a colored paper. You can barely see the colored paper underneath where they sit, so you know which team's watercolors are in which row. The lids are clean and they're all left open. I just wanted you to see that, so you'll know how you need to leave the watercolors today when you put your work away. Okay, enjoy.